All right, so we got breaking news out of Berea today. Welcome back, guys. I'm back here in the little studio here. Uh, we got some breaking news. Todd Monken is officially the new head coach for the Cleveland Browns. We'll talk about that, my little instant reaction to this, and also a little bit of drama, in Berea right now, brewing with defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz and, his reaction to basically him not getting the head coaching job. We'll talk about that. The only thing, though, is I don't really like these types of instant reactions. That's why I really didn't do one for the coordinating one for Ohio State, the offensive coordinator opening and all that kind of thing. I just really think that that's kind of more of a season preview and not really an instant reaction. I don't know. I don't like doing coordinator stuff like that. I think it's a lot easier to kind of look back at those in hindsight. It's really, really hard to kind of, make a take on that and kind of be educated, not just like, shooting stuff and throwing stuff at the wall and see if it sticks. You know what I mean? So, but because this is a head coaching job, this is obviously a huge news for especially the Cleveland Browns as an organization. And we've had a lot of, backlash for the way that the Browns have gone through this coaching search and the rumors that they were making coaches take like certain like written tests and other coaches like dropping out of it, like Mike McDaniel dropping out. He was the big one, really, that dropped out of the coaching race for the Browns, and everyone started making memes. And I really think that the Browns were just trying to be thorough. They didn't want to make a mistake. They didn't want to make like a Freddie Kitchens hire. You know what I mean? And that's funny enough considering we're talking about Todd Monken, who was on that staff in 2019. And I'm going to go through a little bit of his journey and what it came through. We'll talk about that 2019 year here in a little bit. But Todd Monken was, he was the offensive coordinator for Baltimore, which I think is really interesting. The fact that they went to Baltimore was, yet again, it's funny. Like, the whole story. If you're a Browns fan or you're even if a Ravens fan, you know the story behind the rivalry of Baltimore and Cleveland. Art Modell was the owner of the Cleveland Browns, couldn't come up to an agreement with a new stadium with the city of Cleveland, so he decided to move the Browns to Baltimore and become the Ravens. You know what I mean? And they took all the players that the Browns had, the draft capital, like the draft picks that eventually turned into like Ray Lewis and Joe Flacco, which eventually turned into Baltimore winning a Super Bowl. And the Browns were kind of flirting with the Super Bowl, especially back in the 90s, the Elway stuff and all that, those types of things, and back-to-back AFC championship appearances with the drive and the fumble. If you're a Clevelander, you obviously know what those are. And if you're a Denver Bronco fan, you probably already, know who that is too. I encourage you, if you guys don't know, go look it up, go read about it. It's really cool. It's a really good piece of sports history. That was kind of, it hurt Cleveland as like the city of Cleveland. It was probably second to LeBron leaving the first time. That was kind of the tragedy of the move, is what it's called around here, the move. And the Browns eventually did come back in '99, but ever since then they've been in purgatory, where you're so bad, but every year you're bad, you can't see your way to dig out of it. And even when you try to, it ends up getting worse. Let's go into modern times with the Browns wanted to make a decision on a quarterback and maybe find a top 10 quarterback instead of Baker Mayfield, who's a top 20 quarterback, top 15, top 20. They wanted to get a top 10 guy. And they trade for Deshaun Watson, and the whole Baker Mayfield falling out thing happens. And, of course, that ended up not working out. Deshaun Watson was a shell of his former self. I think a lot of the drama that happened in his personal life bled out onto the field. And age is a really big thing too, with Deshaun also not playing in 2020 on his trade request. He sat out the entire 2020 season, basically sat out the entire 2021 season because of his suspension due to what he was going through in his personal life. And he was never the same after that, and it is what it is. And Baker Mayfield goes on and has success with Tampa Bay, even though that looks like it's kind of crumbling. And it looks like the Baker Mayfield that the Browns were seeing the last few years in Cleveland. You know, that's what Baker Mayfield was. But this is not a Baker Mayfield video. This is a Todd Monken video. This is NFL coaching video. So let me just go through with you. I have it up here on my screen. That's why I'm looking over here. Little bit of Todd Monken's background. So, of course, he was a head coach at Southern Miss from 2013 to 2015. He took a Southern Miss team that was 0-12 and got them to a bowl game. In I think his first 2 years, I think maybe even it was his first year that he ended up getting that Southern Miss to a bowl game, a team that went 0-12 the year before he was hired and brought on to that staff. So really, really good there. Then he goes and it becomes an offensive coordinator for the Buccaneers. That's a little bit of a weird spot. You know, you had Jameis Winston in there. The ups and downs of him, and I think he probably suffered a little bit from that. Then he comes on to the Browns as an offensive coordinator under Freddie Kitchens. And this is really where Browns fans have a lot of kind of resentment towards this hire, because 2019 was supposed to be the year the Browns took the big leap. They had Baker Mayfield after his rookie year, showed a lot of promise, and then they bring in Odell Beckham Jr., a top 10, top 15 wide receiver at the time. And they fire this was right after they fired Hugh Jackson. After going 1-32 in 2 years, they fire Hugh Jackson. They put Greg Williams in as their interim head coach. A lot of Browns fans, including myself at the time, really wanted Greg Williams to be the head coach. I think the Browns kind of dodged a bullet there with what he ended up doing in New York as a defensive coordinator. But you know, the stuff that went on, and then they bring in Freddie Kitchens. Obviously, Freddie Kitchens did not work out. He lasted 1 year there. That was a complete failure of a year for the Browns. He leaves and becomes the offensive coordinator at Georgia. And this is where things really take off. From 2020 to 2022, he was the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach for the University of Georgia. If anyone knows 2020 through 2022 Georgia, that is the peak of Georgia right now. The dynasty that the modern dynasty that's not Alabama. So Nick Saban, this is the end of Nick Saban, beginning of Kirby Smart. Really, when Smart took the leap over Saban, that this was Georgia. You know, the Stetson Bennett year, 2022. Of course, as an Ohio State fan, I know that playoff year, Georgia goes undefeated through the regular season, wins the SEC championship, becomes the number 1 seed. Ohio State, of course, losing to Michigan in the very last week. And Michigan goes on to win the Big Ten championship, becomes the number 2 seed. TCU loses their conference championship game, but also gets in. They're the 3rd seed. And Ohio State, because Utah beats USC in the Pac-12 championship game, Utah, I think, had 2 or 3 losses at that time. Ohio State, of course, only had the 1 to Michigan. They get into as a 4th seed. And Ohio State and Georgia play in the was it the Peach Bowl or Sugar Bowl? It was something. It was one of those two. It was in Atlanta, and it was basically a glorified home game for Georgia. C.J. Stroud has one of the best games that he had in his career, and Ohio State loses by a missed kick at midnight. So that's what I always think of Todd Monken in at Georgia. The Stetson Bennett year, of course, he had a really good defense in 2021, but that offense was also really good, and it was a national championship winning offense, of course. He made Stetson Bennett look like an NFL prospect. That's an accomplishment in of itself. You know what I mean? So, and then he becomes an offensive coordinator with the Ravens after with Jim Harbaugh. And this was kind of the point where Lamar Jackson was kind of at a crossroads in his career. You know, in 2021 or in 2022, I'm sorry, the Ravens did not really had a really disappointing year. I think they might have missed the playoffs or maybe even got bounced early in the playoffs. And I think Lamar was dealing with a few injuries. And it was just a really weird like crossroads with Harbaugh and Baltimore, especially Lamar Jackson. And Todd Monken comes in and kind of flips the offensive rounds, and the Ravens go on to, I think, did they not get they got the 1 seed at least one year and lost to Kansas City last year. So the last time Kansas City made the Super Bowl, they played. Was that not in Baltimore? I'm pretty sure that was in Baltimore. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Lamar and the Ravens they for sure got to the AFC Championship game. I don't know what their seeding was at that point, but I'm pretty sure they had a top 2 seed in that year. So they got the offense turned around, and the Ravens had a really, really good year and were Super Bowl contenders. And Monken, and Harbaugh, of course, leaves, and with that, there's not really good place for Baltimore with a new regime like Jesse Menner coming into Baltimore. He's probably going to want to bring his own guys. And, head coaching positions were open, and Monken takes the opportunity and becomes the head coach for the Browns. So I really, really like this hire. It's an offensive-minded guy. Of course, the Browns need at the very least, a competent offense to support a defense that has consistently been top 2. You can argue one between Cleveland and Houston. I think it's probably Houston because Houston's offense is so much better than the Browns. You can say whatever you want about C.J. Stroud and the crumble that he had in the playoffs this year, but that offense is at least somewhat competent. The Browns' offense is mediocre at best. You know what I mean? So. And that defense continued with Myles Garrett getting a sack record and basically carrying the Browns to 4 wins. So, 4 wins or 5 wins, whatever it was. Anyways, so if the Browns can get at least a competent offense, they can be playoff contenders, and they can flip that switch in 1 year. Now I will talk about what happened in the facility a little bit later, but. This is a really, really good hire if you want to improve the offense. Shore Sanders and Dylan Gabriel have struggled this rookie year, but they're rookies, so you never really know. I do think there's probably, if there is a chance that the Browns move off of Dylan Gabriel, I think they probably take that and they keep Shore. You can argue all day if the Browns should take a flyer at quarterback like a Mac Jones or an Anthony Richardson, or try another late round pick in the draft at quarterback again. I don't know. I would think my best thing would probably be a short-term flyer like maybe a Mac Jones. A lot of people don't remember that Mac Jones was actually pretty good in New England before his drop-off. So at least there's something there. With Anthony Richardson, there's not a lot of, there's flashes, of course, but I think his attitude and being a quarterback and subbing yourself out of the game in the middle of an NFL game, regular season game where all these games matter, that's a lot. That's a hard pill for me to swallow right there, to basically give your franchise, give Anthony Richardson the keys of the kingdom, basically, and say, here's our offense, go run it. I don't know. I don't like that. So if the Browns want to bring a flyer in, I probably say Mac Jones would be my personal preference. I'm not going to throw a parade if they do sign it. I'm not going to burn everything down if they don't. So it is what it is. I know a lot of Browns fans want to see what Shedeur Sanders again brings. I don't know, man. I don't know. There's a lot of physical things that I think Shedeur Sanders I don't know if he's capable to be a starting quarterback for a Super Bowl caliber team. And that's where the Browns want to be at right now, especially with Myles Garrett being at the height, his peak of Myles Garrett is only 30 years old and he already broke the sack record. And, with guys like TJ Watt and Micah Parsons kind of coming back down to earth, Myles Garrett is still up there at his peak. You know what I mean? So we'll see if he is in contention to break that record again. But a good offense is always going to help the Browns, because if the Browns offense can score a lot of points, that's going to force teams to pass on the Browns defense, and Myles Garrett can then get sacks. And, they got to take chances and not be able to triple team Myles Garrett every single play. And that defense, there's a lot of pieces that are still on their rookie deals, or they are still signed. You guys still probably sign Devin Bush. I think that's a must get for the Browns defense. I think a lot of people underestimate the Devin Bush and what he has done for this Browns defense. We'll see what JOK kind of comes into. He is still injured with that neck injury. I don't know if he even plays again in the NFL. And if he does, I don't know if he's on that same level that he was before he got injured. But Schlesinger is on a rookie deal. Mason Graham is on a rookie deal. Alex Wright, I think if he's not on a rookie deal, this is his, like, they got to sign him like this coming off season. So there's a lot of guys that are, it's at least manageable. It's not like a full-on rebuild of that defense. This wasn't like a defense that was like, okay, we're going to run this for 1 year and then we're just going to get rid of everybody. No, this is a defense that has a lot of guys that are going to be coming back. And it's on the front office to re-sign guys that need contracts. And to maybe even bring guys in that can help that defense in some areas. I think nickel corner is probably a good place to look, maybe in the draft or even free agency. But back to the offensive side of the ball, Todd Monken is going to help with a lot of things. I think the fact that we got Todd Monken, an offensive coach, is going to really help the Browns, especially in the draft and in free agency, of what they want. You know, you got to rebuild the offensive line. You have to get a wide receiver. Probably going to have to sign a backup tight end. I don't think we're going to get David Njoku. I think he's probably going to walk in free agency, probably with his asking price. He just doesn't have that production that he's gotten the past few years, this particular year, and it sucks that it had to happen in a contract year. So I think Harold Fane is probably going to take over the starting tight end role, and then, which he already kind of did at the end of the season. Njoku was basically out for like 2 or 3 games at the end of the season. So I definitely think that they're probably going to let Njoku walk, have Harold Fane come in, and maybe get like a Harrison Bryant back in the Browns, maybe and get a backup tight end at the very least to kind of help Harold Fane and get the 12 personnel kind of back for the Browns. We'll see what Todd Monken's style is. I honestly think that my instant reactions are for this head coaching hire are the least like important reactions I'm going to have. I got to like watch games obviously to know his style and what he likes to do and what he doesn't like to do. But this is definitely not the worst hire they could have made. I'll move on to what's going on, the drama that's happening in Cleveland right now. So there was a report after Todd Monken was announced, and basically Jim Schwartz was told that they're going to pass up on him. Schwartz apparently was really, really mad and said his goodbyes to a lot of people in the facility and basically said that he's not coming back. But the Browns have reported that they are open to bringing him back onto the staff, which I think would be best case scenario for the Browns. A lot of players have opened up and said that they want to keep Schwartz on the staff if he's not going to get the head coaching job. You know what I mean? And you know that's going to be something that the Browns have got to get. Now, is Jim Schwartz the end-all be-all? Like, I'm going to completely throw a temper tantrum if he is not re-signed? No, not necessarily. Maybe it is a good thing to have maybe a fresh face in that defense. That defense is still stacked. That roster is still stacked. This is not, a Kyle Shanahan doing something out of nothing with an offense. No, this is a defense that has a lockdown corner in Denzel Ward, a really, really good linebacker in Carson Schlesinger, one of the greatest Browns ever in Myles Garrett, and a bunch of other people that I'm not even naming right now that have been really, really good contributors to this defense. This is not just a scheme guru type defense. This is a defense that has a really, really good coordinator and a really, really good defense of like player-wise. So is it the end-all be-all if Schwartz does not come back? No. Is it really, really helpful, especially for the Browns' culture and morale, that he does come back? Yes. We'll see what happens there. I honestly don't know if he does come back, but I would love it if he did. Maybe the Browns can kind of mend fences and do something with that. I just don't know if that's likely. I think Schwartz probably goes somewhere else and maybe gets a defensive coordinator or even a head coaching job somewhere, and maybe in the college level, and then comes back up to the NFL or gets a defensive coordinating job somewhere else in the NFL. But that is going to be my little thing there. Not really going to talk about much for Ohio State. I'll save that for another video. But that's really it. Todd Monken is officially the head coach, not quarterback, head coach for the Cleveland Browns. The head coaching search is finally over. I was getting kind of nervous. I was really, really hoping that like nothing would come out about like the Browns offering the job to somebody and them saying no. That was my biggest fear. I was okay with people dropping out, like a Mike McDaniel saying, like, and the Browns basically saying, hey, we're probably not going to hire you, so I would probably look for maybe a coordinating job or another head coaching job somewhere. He goes and takes the job with Harbaugh and the Chargers. And that is what it is. Udensky also kind of dropped out. I wonder if the Browns also said to him, hey, we're probably not going to hire you, so maybe look for another job somewhere. And maybe they got it down to Schwartz and Udensky. Or not Udensky. Sorry. Good God. Todd Monken. I don't know why I said Udensky. But Udensky telling Udensky to go and find another job. Maybe they got it down to Schwartz and Todd Monken. So that's going to do it for today. A little quick instant reaction for you. I know this kind of went a little bit longer than I thought it was going to. But until next time, I'll see you when I see you.